Hello, my wonderful, fantastic, stupendous third graders. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We are still in Unit 5, Light and Sound. We've been learning a lot about light, and now we're going to start talking about sound. So today's read aloud is called What is Sound? What is it? Let's find out. Some words you will hear throughout the read aloud. Cacophony is a noun and it's a harsh, jarring noise. Medium is a noun and it means a type of substance through which energy travels. So like a substance like water or like a book or whatever it is that energy is traveling through. Sound is vibrations that are produced that travel through particles and are heard by our ears. Sound waves are the form that sounds take when they travel through a surrounding medium such as air, liquid, or a solid. Vibration is a rapid movement back and forth. So this lesson is being taught as a narrative, and a narrative is just another way to say a story, right? So what point of view is this story written in? Is it first person? Is it someone inside the story that's telling the story? A character from the story is telling us what's happening? Or is it third person? Someone outside the story is telling it. That's right, it's third person. Someone outside the story is telling it. I don't know if you've played any video games that have this, but some video games will ask you when you get on if you want to play first person or third person. So if you want to play first person, then you become that character in the video game, right? Just like in the story, it's told by a character if it's in first person. But if you want to play third person, then you're like the narrator outside the story and you're able to see everything as it happens. You're not seeing through the eyes of a character. I thought that was interesting. So how do we know that the story is third person? It's told by someone outside the story. Well, if you pay attention, you'll see that the narrator never uses the words I, we, us. It's always he, she, they. So you can tell by the pronouns that the narrator uses if they're in the story or not in the story. The only time we have I or me or us is when, or you, is when the characters start talking in dialogue, not when the narrator is narrating the story. Who are our two main characters? If you remember, it's two older gentlemen, Jack and Samuel, who have been friends since the third grade. And who are some secondary characters we have met? Right, we have Alfie, Samuel's dog, and then we also have Ethan and Amy, Samuel's grandchildren. What are some of the settings? Name some of the settings our stories have had so far. Well, we've been at Samuel's house a lot, especially in his garden, sometimes in his kitchen. We were at the Hudson, in the story they were at the Hudson River fishing, Jack and Samuel were. And then last time they went to a fair and went to the House of Mirrors. So how do the settings affect the story and what we are learning? The settings really add to what we're learning. Like when Samuel's at his house and they're in the garden, they're able to talk about the sunlight in the garden and the paintings that they're making out there. And that starts a discussion about light. They talk about the reflection off the Hudson River, and that starts a discussion about reflection, and also reflection in the House of Mirrors at the fair. So the setting really affects the story and what we're learning. Alright, so you can see kind of what's happening in this illustration. Looks like Jack and Samuel are going somewhere, and it looks like Ethan and Amy may be going with them. Let's hear the story and find out. Come on, Samuel, we haven't got all day, called Jack. We're going to have to drive a little faster than you did on the way here. Why all the rush? Asked Samuel. We've got plenty of time. I don't want to miss the train, urged Jack, reaching over to honk the horn to signal the children to come outside. Samuel and Jack were taking Amy and Ethan to New York City for the day. They were going to park at the train station and take the train into the city. The day would be filled with a boat tour around Manhattan, followed by a concert and dinner. They're here, called Ethan from the doorway. The children ran excitedly towards the car, waving goodbye to Alfie and their mom and dad. Alfie barked excitedly in response. Alfie, behave yourself and don't bark all day at squirrels, called Samuel. Ha! Laughed Jack. His bark is worse than his bite. What do you think he means his bark is worse than his bite? It means that he sounds worse than he is. So people use this as figurative language, as a figure of speech. When somebody maybe seems tougher than they are, or seems scarier than they are, but they're actually not dangerous, right? Like Alfie, he barks a lot, but he's not going to bite anything. You mean like yours? Quipped Samuel. Ha ha, said Jack dryly. All right, they're going to be on the train. You can see the setting with the countryside, and we got some sheep. They arrived and made their way to the platform where the train was already waiting. The 4 travelers boarded the train and went in search of 4 seats together. Moments later, their train pulled out of the station. You see, exclaimed Jack, we just made it in time. Images of the leafy countryside and the sparkling Hudson River flashed past. The children talked excitedly about the sights they would see and the food they would eat in New York City. After a while, they sat back in their seats and admired the view. Samuel had brought his new cane with him, and while his new glasses had improved his vision to some extent, walking with a cane helped him to feel even more secure. Granddad, said Ethan, do you like the sound of the train? I really, really like it. It makes me feel as if we are going on a real adventure. We are going on a real adventure, Samuel replied. Did you know that sound travels in sound waves just as light travels in light waves? Samuel asked. There they are on the train. Now, hold on a minute, yelled Jack. You are a wonderful painter, Samuel, and you have taught us all you know about light. You have explained to us how it helps you create beautiful images, but I do declare, Samuel, you are not going to lecture us about sound. If anyone is going to do that, it should be me, Jack Auderay. I don't think I've taught you everything I know about light, retorted Samuel, but if you want to tell us some interesting facts about sound, then please do. I would love to hear what you have to say. After all, you are a talented musician and have spent your life dedicated to music. Flattery will get you nowhere, Samuel Van Lumen, yelled Jack, continuing the conversation. Did you know that our ears, the receptors of sound, are usually self-cleaning? Said an animated Jack. Oh, that's just plain gross, exclaimed Amy. Okay, well, how about this, said Jack. Jack continued. Your ears don't stop working even when you are asleep. Your brain shuts out sound well as much as it possibly can. Jack, is that really true? Asked Ethan quizzically. Sure it is, Jack replied confidently. That's why alarm clocks work, if they're loud enough. Oh, look at the horses, exclaimed Amy excitedly. They're galloping. All right, kiddos, I think we should all sit back and relax. When we are in the city, I will share my knowledge and wisdom with you, whether you like it or not. In the meantime, enjoy the view. With that, Jack sat back and stared contentedly out of the train window. It was well over 2 hours before they reached their destination. As the 4 disembarked the train and made their way out of the train station, a cacophony of city sounds rose up into the morning air. People were shouting, horns were honking, and traffic was moving in all directions. It's so noisy, screeched Ethan. Ethan, hold Jack's hand, please, instructed Samuel. Amy, give me your arm. Look at all the sound. Together the four made their way toward a row of bright yellow taxicabs parked in front of the train station. Moments later, they were sitting inside one of the cabs on their way to the city harbor. There they would take a boat ride around the island of Manhattan. The children stared out of the taxi windows as the hustle and bustle of the city. Sunlights glimmered and shined on the windows that adorned or decorated the high-rise buildings. As the cab moved through the congested city streets, they were engulfed by what felt like a wave of sound and movement. "As you can tell," said Jack enthusiastically, looking at the children's amazed expressions, "even if you couldn't see the city, you sure can hear it. But do you know what sound is and how it travels?" he asked. "Not really," Amy replied. Ethan simply shook his head. At that moment, their cab came to a stop again. It was in a long line of cars trying to turn left, but nothing was moving. Jack took the opportunity to talk to the children. "Well, just like light, sound is a form of energy," Jack continued. "There are many, many different kinds of sounds. All sound is made by the movement of objects. That movement is called vibration. When you pluck a guitar string, the string vibrates or moves back and forth. The vibrations make the air shake. The air shakes because tiny particles in the air have been disturbed by the vibration. Those vibrations are called sound waves," said Jack authoritatively. "If a string instrument like this guitar produces sound like by the plucking of a string, how do you think a wind instrument like this recorder makes sound?" "Well, vibrations are caused by the flow of air around and through the instrument, which disturbs the particles in the air and allows the vibration to travel. The sound waves created by the violinist in the distance move through the air to the person's ear." "That's cool," said Ethan, who was listening intently. "So just as light enters our eyes in light waves, the sounds of horns, people, and cars rushing by enter our ears in sound waves," he offered. "Exactly," said Jack cheerfully. "Sound waves move outward from a vibrating object, kind of like ripples of water. Just like light, sound waves can travel through solids, liquids, and gases. Sometimes we can feel very strong vibrations through solid objects like the ground or the hard floor of a building." "Interestingly, though," Jack continued enthusiastically, "sound waves cannot travel through space." "Why not?" asked Amy. All those sounds that they're hearing in the city. "Well, unlike light, sound cannot travel through space because it is quite nearly a vacuum. There are almost no particles to disturb in the vacuum of space. For example, think about a rocket that can be seen shooting through space. You might be able to see it, but it simply cannot be heard," Jack explained. "Wow," pondered Ethan. "It's strange that something that is so loud on Earth would be silent in space." Jack nodded. "Light waves travel better when there are fewer particles, and sound waves travel better when there are more particles. The very fact that space is a vacuum is what allows light waves to travel so quickly through it. On the other hand, the vacuum of space doesn't allow sound to travel through it at all." Suddenly, Samuel announced, "We're here." So traveling through string, sound can travel well through the medium of the solid string between the two metal cans if it is held tight. So because of the vibration that the sound makes, it can travel from one can to the other. That's pretty cool. You should maybe try it sometime at home. Samuel paid the taxi cab driver, and the four travelers made their way towards the big sign that said Harbor Tours. Before long, they were on board a tour boat and were busily munching on hot dogs, pizza, and pretzels. As they gazed out into the harbor filled with a variety of boats, the warm breeze ruffled Ethan's hair. "This is so cool, Granddad," exclaimed Ethan excitedly. "I can't wait for the boat to start moving." I hope you've brought your sea legs, said Jack as he devoured a salted pretzel. Oh, and before I forget, you should also know, Jack continued, that sound waves travel much more slowly than light waves do. Sound waves travel at different speeds depending on the medium through which the vibrations are traveling, whether it's a solid, a liquid, or a gas. Sound waves travel fastest through solids. Here they are in the boat, the big horn. Oh, said Samuel, that is the opposite of light waves, which travel fastest through a vacuum. Samuel smiled at her keen observation. The captain of the boat tooted the horn and announced that they were about to set off on a tour around Manhattan. And another thing, said Jack. On a warm day like today, the sound of the horn travels faster than it would on a cold day. Do you know why? Samuel and Ethan shrugged. When it is warm, the particles in the air vibrate faster, which causes the sound waves to travel faster. Awesome, said Ethan as he stared up at the large horn. As the boat moved away from its mooring, the captain tooted the horn again. Ethan listened to the sound of the horn as it seemed to be carried away by the wind, and thought long and hard about the things Jack had just explained to him about sound. You might be interested to know that even though light and sound can both easily travel through air, light travels through air 850 times faster than sound. Wow. Okay, so what is sound? Sound is a form of energy that is caused by the vibrations of particles and that travels in waves. How do we sense the vibrations of sound waves? Our ears receive the sound waves and help us to hear. We can feel vibrations through solid objects. You heard the word cacophony in the story. What does it mean? Harsh, jarring noise. Very loud sounds. Not very pleasant sounds. In which setting you heard described in today's read aloud was there a cacophony of sounds? They were greeted by a cacophony of sounds on the streets of New York City when they left the train station. Right, it was really loud. Alright, so describe sources of sound found in the image that contribute to the cacophony of sounds heard. What were some sources of sounds that made it jarring and loud that you see in this picture? Compare and contrast the setting of Samuel's house along the Hudson River with the setting of the street of New York City. Be sure to use the word setting when you talk about it. You can look at the illustrations, different pictures, for help. What was the difference in the settings? What was similar? Compare and contrast light and sound. How are they similar? Both are forms of energy. Both travel in waves. Both are perceived by our senses. How are they different? They travel at different speeds through various mediums. Light waves travel fastest through a vacuum, and sound waves travel fastest through solids. Light can travel without particles, but sound cannot travel through a vacuum because it needs particles to vibrate. Why can't you hear a rocket in space? Sound waves can't travel in a vacuum because there are no particles to vibrate. And space is basically a vacuum. There's very, very few particles at all. Describe how Jack's dedication to music contributes to the discussions the friends and the children share while they are on the train and visiting New York City. Jack knows a lot about sound, so they talk about the sounds they hear, what makes sound and makes it travel, and how it travels. When you experience a thunderstorm, do you see the lightning first or hear the thunder first? Why do you think this is? Well, light travels faster than sound, so you see the lightning before you hear the thunder. Our word for today is vibration. In the read aloud you heard, all sound is made by the movement of objects. That movement is called vibration. Say the word vibration. A vibration is a rapid movement back and forth. The vibration of the guitar string made a beautiful sound. Have you ever heard a vibration? What was causing the vibration? If it was a musical instrument, then what was that instrument? All right, third graders, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about sound today, and we will learn more in the next lesson. Good job.